At the last conference I attended, after I gave a speech decrying the lack of security and financial inclusion, a young man came to me and said, "This really spoke to my personal story." Young man in his 20s has been living in Western and developed countries for the past 15 years, has not been able to open a bank account in 15 years. Every time I write my name and place of birth in the application, the process is already ended. I was born in Iran. I didn't choose that. I didn't do anything. I pay my taxes. I have a job. All I want is to deposit my paycheck in a bank account so I can buy groceries. For 15 years, I've been unable to do that. That is the face of the unbanked. There are people walking the streets around you in this city of privilege, in the independent district of the City of London, bought and paid for by banking corporations, in this little enclave that is the Vatican of capitalism, a city within a city. People walking around you, invisible people, your janitors, your service professionals, the people making you a sandwich who don't have a bank account, who take their paycheck in cash and they go to various places in order to ask for payday loans. Maybe they take a check or other form of payment they can't deposit, and they get charged 10 or 15% or 30% to send money home to their loved ones so they can support a basic life of subsistence. That's the unbanked. They're right here in this city. Don't imagine the great masses of Africa. Of course, they're unbanked. Or Southeast Asia, or South America, right here, your neighbors. And they have been made to live in that position just so we can continue this illusion that safety comes from totalitarian surveillance. This very conference is being sponsored by a company that is spreading around millions of dollars in marketing that does surveillance, that is actually promoting and advancing the state of the art. You all have their name on your badge. Look down and check it out. A company that builds state-of-the-art surveillance and then shares and sells that data to companies that further progress that data to intelligence agencies. And this lovely form of trickle-down surveillance eventually reaches some regime that likes to cut up journalists with hacksaws. Don't fool yourself. There is no ability to separate your position within a company like that from the moral implications of your actions. And I say to you, if you're hiring people and you see names like that on the resume, just like if I was hiring people and I saw General Dynamics, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, or any of the companies in our space that are promoting and actively pursuing surveillance technology to sell it to the highest bidder, they have declared moral bankruptcy. If you declare moral bankruptcy, you should have 7 years of trying to find a job and being interrogated about your ethics. Just like one of the poor people whose life has been stuck in a box of poverty will have to spend 7 years trying to prove to a banker that they have the level of privilege to get banking. We have to make some deep moral choices at the moment. We stand at a crossroads because right now, the world governments are trying to abolish cash. They're trying to abolish the very last lifeline that remains for the billions of people who have a life of poverty, not because they don't work, they work harder than all of us. Not because they don't deserve, but simply because of where they were born, or what documentation they have, or what level of literacy they have, or even how they look. In Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to own property and bank accounts. And this is the case in half a dozen countries around the world. And we look at that and say, shame on them, that's immoral, that's disgusting. And then we turn around and we do the same thing to immigrants in this country and my country I'm half British, half American. I have to apologize to 194 countries around the world the moment I arrive. And I know in my heart that every time I pay taxes, I'm killing thousands of people by proxy. I still pay because I'm also helping people who are in welfare, people who need help. But most importantly, when we make these moral choices, we have to understand surveillance never stopped crime. Surveillance is the license given to the people who are on the top of that to control our lives. They will commit crimes. They will commit the worst of crimes, what I call mega crimes. And I know Britain doesn't use the metric system, so mega is the prefix we use for millions. A mega crime is one where, for example, you foreclose on 1 million homeowners and don't go to jail. That's a mega crime. We're doing surveillance and analytics to catch a petty drug dealer who's selling pot for Bitcoin. Who's doing surveillance and analytics on Lockheed Martin? Who's doing surveillance and analytics on the money laundering banks? Nobody. Do you know why? None of them ever go to jail. The regulators are completely captured, and the very system of controlling finance from above by having levers of power over the lives of millions of people, billions of people, of having the audacity to cut off entire countries and say, well, they're under sanctions. They're not privileged enough, they're not people enough to gain financial services. Guess who that attracts? If you build levers of power like that, the very worst sociopaths in our society are attracted like flies to shit to grab hold of those levers of power and destroy all of your freedoms as quickly as they can. We are building societies in which one bad election is the last election. And if you don't believe me, look at what's happened in Turkey, what's happened in Russia, what's happened in Venezuela, what happens every day to billions of people around the world. Let me end on a positive note, because you're probably a bit freaked out by all of this. You should be. This is serious stuff. Open, borderless, public, transparent, neutral, censorship-resistant, strictly private cryptocurrencies exist. They will not be regulated. They cannot be regulated, not by committees, because they're regulated by mathematics. They're regulated by algorithms. They provide certainty of transaction. They provide programmable customer protection. They provide reputation management. They provide access without identity. They give billions of people, eventually, not just a bank account in their pocket, but a bank in their pocket. They democratize the function of banking and turn it into an app that everyone can access without vetting, because they've already pre-vetted. They have agreed to download the software that follows the rules of consensus, and that is the only vetting required in these systems. But we shouldn't allow that. We did. But we can't have people make anonymous transactions. They will. But we must regulate this. You can't. And you won't. Because 6 billion people need this. And you have neither the moral authority nor, more importantly, the practical capability to stand in their way, or even to stand in the way of what is going to be the greatest revolution in financial services in 3 centuries: universal access to basic finance. Thank you.